You're listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast, discussing all aspects of precision and long-range rifle shooting. This episode is brought to you by Impact Dynamics. And now, over to your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to the Precision Shooting Podcast. My name is Rusty, and joining me in this episode, all the way from the US, is Mr. Rex Tibor. How are you, Rex?
I'm doing good, Rusty. How about you, buddy?
Yeah, going very well. Thank you for joining us early this morning. Well, early for me.
Yeah, it's quite a time gap between North Dakota and the United States and down under there. It's quite a difference in time for sure.
Yeah, we're about 5 o'clock in the morning here, so I am trying to wake up. What's the time there? You're about midday or so, aren't you? Lunchtime.
It's about lunchtime. Yep. So it's not bad. I appreciate your accommodation with my time there. That was very kind of you.
That's all right. You know, nothing like waking up nice and early and getting the day started and kicking off with some good conversation. Whereabouts is North Dakota in the U.S., for those not familiar?
So if you take the continent of North America, and the United States is in the middle of that continent, and then the northern border with Canada is kind of a big straight line, right in the center against Canada, in between Montana and Minnesota on the border with Canada is a little state, very low population, around 500,000 people in the entire state, and that's North Dakota. And very, very cold continental interior type climate. In the winter times are very brutal. We can get down to, I know you guys use Celsius, but in Fahrenheit terms, we get down to 50 below, 70 below Fahrenheit, which is very cold. And we have a good time in summer. It can get up to 100 degrees, and we got a diverse topography and landscape out here, but it's mostly wide open country, and the culture is very, very old school. There's not a lot of cities, a lot of small towns, ranching communities, agriculture type communities, and a little bit of oil field activity, here and there when boom and bust cycles. So, yep, that's where I'm from.
Yeah, sounds amazing. And the hunting's good there?
Oh, yeah. There's, back in the old days, when Lewis and Clark, for a little bit of history, explored the western United States, they're the first people, from the European side. And as far as we can tell, I mean, if you go way back, there's probably the Vikings and the Romans and the Chinese probably even explored once. But when they were settling the place, Lewis and Clark went through North Dakota. Back in those days, there was a lot of elk on the Great Plains and in the Badlands, grizzly bears, a lot of deer, excellent buffalo herds during the summer, and a lot of game. Right now, mostly it's like white-tailed deer and mule deer are the large game that everyone starts going crazy after. Actually, season just started here. That we got our first good snow a week or two ago, and so it's nice and cold up here now, and it's wintertime, and they're having fun chasing them critters around. And it's all kind of long-range shooting, too, because it's so open country, Sometimes your closest shot might be 200-300 yards. And then, beyond that is where you see them and try to take advantage of the landscape and the topography and try to get sneaky and try to get close enough to make a shot. But yeah, there's lots of good deer hunting, prairie dog hunting for varmint hunters. They're like a small underground animal. They burrow in holes, for those that might not be familiar with that. Or, coyotes and varmints. And there is elk still in the Badlands and up in the mountains here. And really, really, really large species of elk. For those who are into hunting, the antlers get very huge. A lot of Boone and Crockett level records have been taken from the area right around here. I think it's because the winters are so tough that they're a large-bodied animal to survive the winter.
Okay.
And with that, there's the subspecies is really, really large in terms of if you're looking for a trophy or something like that. So, yeah, all kinds of hunting. A guy grew up kind of doing that since as early as I can remember with my father. So
you grew up in North Dakota? You've been there your whole life?
No, I grew up here in a very small community. My father was a professional musician for almost his whole life, but he was also very much a hunting man. Musicians don't make a lot of cash. Even successful ones, which my father and some of my other family were very successful back in the 70s and 80s, and they did tours and they made albums and they had recording studios and they did all kinds of stuff like that, studio musician jobs. But it's not something that makes a huge pile of gold. And so we kind of relied on hunting for a lot of our, food and filling the fridge and the freezer. And so, yes, my father, I remember being 4 years old out in the woods. Well, we could call it the woods, but in the creek bottom, very wooded, lots of cottonwood trees, and sitting there and he's trying to explain to me why I have to be still, why I have to be quiet, because kids are noisy. And I remember him really being a good mentor on that, and explaining, no, you got to be quiet, you got to be sneaky, so that when the deer comes, you don't scare it away. And then we're bow hunting with a old bear, wood recurve bow with no sights on it, old school. And you have to get very close, like, how close you have to get when you don't have sights on a recurve bow. So I remember doing that since my earliest memories, and it continued on. And of course, I've been all over the place, and kind of went all over I was in the Rockies for a while, and then I was abroad a little bit, and got to do all kinds of fun stuff and learn different skill sets from different folks, and it was a good time. I have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, brilliant. And you said you spent some time overseas. Whereabouts was that?
Oh, I just, I'm a traveling man, so I like to explore the world, and with my little guitar in hand and stuff like that. And I've been to Europe and Asia, and kind of all over the place. And so I continue to like to do that. I'd love to come visit your part of the world at some point in the future. It'd be pretty cool. Australia has always been on the list, and that would be very cool. I got a few different friends that are from down there, and it's actually interesting because and I don't know because I haven't been there yet, but the Outback, from what I hear, is very similar to the western part of the United States where I grew up in terms of culture. Accent's different, but a lot of the experiences, a lot of the saloon type activities that happen where you throw chairs at each other at the saloon, and being out in the middle of nowhere, with driving around with the pickup truck real fast, hitting bumps and having a good time. That's the same kind of stuff we grew up with here in the Western United States as well.
I think you might be right. And look, we do throw chairs with the best of them. Absolutely. Yep. we can have a big competition when you come over here if we can throw the most chairs in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah, nothing convinces someone of something by like throwing a chair at them. That's a very good communication mechanism.
It's a very, very persuasive, isn't it? Is that what you're doing in part of your training? Is that one of the methods?
Well, yeah, I suppose you got to have a hard line eventually, right? I usually like to try to explain things nicely to people, and I have a lot of patience, but eventually you do got to throw the chair or whatever you got to throw.
Oh, brilliant. That's right. And obviously music has been pretty big part of your life. I know that your early YouTube videos were pretty heavy on music.
Yeah, I started off my YouTube channel. I never had the internet until 2009, and I graduated from secondary education back around the turn of the century there, and I didn't have a computer. I was a field guy. I was always in the field, working, doing my thing, doing stuff like that, and so computers was not necessarily a mystery to me, but it was something that I had zero use for. And so when I decided after being out of secondary school for about 8 years that I would just go and be educated, so I went and I studied natural sciences at a university, and I got a couple different degrees in science there. And I was originally intending to use it for education. I thought it'd be fun to teach science class, either at a college level or university level. So I was going to college, and as a part of going to college, you have to do everything online. So it forced me to buy a computer, which I did not want to do because I hate computers. I'd rather be outside. You know what I mean? And so at any rate, I got a computer so you can log for your classes or whatever in the homework. And it was just a whole different planet than what I was used to growing up with chalkboards and, getting hit by a stick or whatever and reading in a book. And so I got a computer, and then as a part of that deal, some friends said, hey, there's this thing called YouTube where you can upload your music or whatever you're doing, or, guys upload funny videos about like cats or, I don't know, all the different stuff, right?
All the important things in life. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I thought, that'd be a cool place. Had a lot of people. I was recording music and doing things like that. And I thought, hey, I'll share this music. But how do you, making DVDs is a tedious process. And so, or not DVDs, but we call them laser circles. CDs, right?
That's the ones.
The laser circle. And so making those is tedious. It takes like hours per deal, and then it's expensive. And I thought, man, if I could just throw them on the YouTube there, that would be interesting. And so I put my music on the YouTube, but I realized you could put pictures behind it. So I started organizing my albums with just picture slideshow kind of deals. And then as I played with the editing software, I thought, man, this is kind of fun. It's like an art form, graphic design mixed with music and articulating like what you're trying to communicate in the song. I thought that was cool. And so I kind of got into the music side, and the original ones are really, really, really basic. Very basic in terms of videography, you know what I mean? And so it's kind of like Stone Age type stuff. And then, of course, I used it. I also like historical and biblical type stuff, Bible study type stuff or whatever. So I put some of that on there. My channel was originally mostly my commentary on the world, the universe, and music. And there was anything about firearms on there because, as you probably know from where you're at, and even here nowadays in the United States, it's not, where I'm from, it's totally normal, but the rest of the United States, it's not always politically expedient to get involved with firearms, especially if you put it online. There are certain lines of work, for example, the university world, the education world might not like that. If you try to apply for a job elsewhere, if I was to do that here at home, it's very normal. Part of the culture to be inundated with firearms culture and shooting stuff after work or whatever and hunting. It's all very normal for the particular part of the United States I'm from.
Sure.
But if I want to be more flexible with my career opportunities, I had to be more careful. And so I'd never posted anything about the firearm stuff online, just out of caution for that, until a little bit later.
Yeah, I saw that your first gun-related video, or correct me if I'm wrong, was customizing your Sager 12 gauge. Is that right?
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, we had the auto-loading 12-gauge shotguns, and we had so much fun with it. It was hilarious, just running around and in the Badlands shooting, whatever, pop cans or just blowing stuff away. And so it was hilarious. It was just so much fun that I thought we got to videotape this because it's such a fun gun. If you want to convert someone into a firearms enthusiast, you take them out with the Sega 12 with the 20-round drum. And there's no recoil, and you can hammer out 20 rounds like in a couple seconds, and pretty much anything in front of you that was the target is no longer there. So it's very, very effective for winning people over. They love it, And so I posted a couple of videos like that on there, and it was kind of fun. And then I thought, it'd be fun, I'll throw one of them long-range videos on there. And I think I did a couple videos with the .338 Lapua Magnum and a surgeon rifle that I still have. And people were very interested in that. And so they started asking questions on how that would be done. Like, how the heck do you shoot like that far? And I didn't realize, oh, man, I didn't know this wasn't a thing because we're in what I used to do with it and where I come from, that's kind of a skill set that a lot of people have. Maybe not on that particular, maybe not in depth that much as I have expounded upon later as it came out for the next few years in the instructional series I put out. But it was kind of a thing that I was surprised. Okay, so I started trying to do little tutorials. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do a couple little but the tutorials were in email form. So people would ask me, oh, how do you pick a scope? And it became such a workload of trying to answer everyone's emails just from a couple of videos I posted. I'm like, well, how do you account for spin drift? And I'm like, well, that's going to be like an hour-long conversation. And when you're typing it, it's like a 3-week dissertation you got to type up. And I figured, man, maybe I didn't realize there's such a gap in knowledge here. And it would be cool to share the enthusiasm of long-range precision shooting with the world if they don't know how to do it, and if maybe you have a knack for explaining it, maybe a little video tutorial series would be in line. And so that's where it was a little bit difficult to stick my neck out there and decide to kind of put that out there for those political reasons, like I said before. But anyways, I dived in full bore and said, heck with it, and people loved it so much, it was originally going to be a 5 or a 10-part series. And it turned into 101 videos. People enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it too. I enjoy talking about stuff that I like engaging with people, and I like helping people learn things or teach it as much as I can or learning things from them. I love the conversation. And it's a field in firearms which actually requires a huge amount of discipline, of not only skill set, but of character to execute with any kind of effectiveness. So most of your goofballs who are going to get into firearms, at least where I'm from, might not pick that particular venue because they don't have enough patience. They just want to, run around and get Western, right?
Yeah.
But if you really want to get effective with precision shooting at extreme long ranges, you have to kind of become a scientist. And that requires a lot of study and a lot of attention to detail, which weeds out, as a natural filtration mechanism, a lot of the people who maybe I wouldn't want to be engaging anyways on the channel.
That's a really good point where, we are in a sport that you can't quite so easily just pick up and go. You do have to spend some time studying, some research and getting that discipline to actually make things work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it requires a lot of work and years and years and years and years of messing around if you're trying to learn it yourself,
Sure.
Some formal instruction can be helpful. I learned a lot from my father, obviously, and from cousins and friendly competition with just family members out in the bush, just having a good time. Like, oh, how far can I shoot? And you keep trying to outdo each other. And then, I got some more formal instruction later from some different mentors of mine, and they kind of explained how to dial things in more properly on the optic and utilize ballistics and mathematics. And this is before they had ballistic calculators that were available to civilians for normal prices, right? And when I learned it, I did it longhand with a pencil and a calculator. And so, and then by observation also, using scientific method, doing actual testing with the rifle, writing down the dope, and then comparing that with different atmospheric data from different, data upon previous engagement. Dope is what that means. And so kind of getting scientific, I was able to refine a data system that was very field expedient that would make it very effective for actual real world use, which I found fun because I have all kinds of real world uses I can do. They can go hunting maybe, or the tactical style shooting, where you're shooting at the different targets at unknown distances with the time limit pressure in less than ideal positions. Things like that are a lot of fun. The PRS style shooting or the NRL style for here in the United States are very, very big in the last couple of years anyways.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more enthusiasts in the sport now, which is exciting.
Yeah, we have certainly seen that significant growth here, and it continues to grow. As I'm talking to you now, we are 2 weeks away from our PRS finale for the year. So we've certainly seen a massive growth, and this is the first year of the series, and expected more shooters and more events next year. So we're definitely mirroring that and seeing that over here.
Yep. Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, I know that I've talked to I got a friend who lives in Melbourne, and he visits once in a while, comes over and hangs out, and we have a good time. And there's a lot of enthusiasts. That used to be a part of the culture. I know pre-1990s in Australia was kind of very similar to the United States in terms of firearms enthusiasm and things like that, hunting and all that kind of stuff, until I think it was, what was the event that happened there? The Port Arthur massacre? That what happened?
Yes, that took a significant dent into the cultural aspect of it. Absolutely. Yeah,
which is unfortunate because many reasons. I don't know how much you want to get into that whole topic on your show. I'm willing to get into there if you're allowed to, but I don't know the rules over there, man.
No,
I know I get in trouble when I bring it up, so oh man. But we have similar things happening here in the United States. We'll keep it that way. Here in the United States, people, and let's start over like this. It's kind of funny. I'm going to use a little bit of dark humor here, okay? Nobody ever killed anybody in any bad way in all of history. Roman Empire, Medo-Persians, Greeks, like the Mongolian invasions, all the different wars throughout time. Nobody actually killed anybody for any bad reasons until the invent of semi-automatic firearms.
That's right.
Before then, nobody could get killed.
No, it's
nope. It wasn't even possible. There's no way to kill a human, and so
not at all.
That's. No, and there was no criminals, there was no robberies, there was no violent crime, and there was no murders ever in history until they invented firearms. That's when the problem started. And so
everything changed then.
Yes, and I'm very happy that our politicians have the wisdom to see that dynamic and that trend, that trend started when they invented firearms in history. And so I'm really glad they've got a good control of that deal, and now only good people with guns now exist on the face of the whole earth, right? And so there's no problems anymore.
It's great that you've got so much confidence in your elected leaders over there. It's refreshing to hear that, Rex. I'm really encouraged.
Oh, man.
Let's come back to probably what most people know you for is, or at least came across you initially, was the Sniper 101 series, which you alluded to, which ended up being 101 videos. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It originally started off being labeled as a long-range precision shooting 101.
Yep.
Unfortunately, in the title, as it's displayed on YouTube, nobody can see what the heck the actual video is about, like barrel harmonics or cartridge selection or whatever, right? Or
Gotcha.
like system rigidity. And so to truncate it, I called it the Sniper 101, which is, legitimate because that is one of the things you have to master in that specific skill set. But it's not only for those guys. It's for any kind of shooting of any animate targets for any field application, whether that PRS, competition shooting or hunting or whatever. But so that was kind of where the huge amount of popularity came in on my particular channel. I wasn't even paying attention to views or subscribers until someone told me to look at it. I didn't even know where to find it. I just upload the video, and then there's questions, and I answer a few of them, and I was out in the field all the time shooting and having fun and working, as a working man, and doing my studies and all that stuff and reading books and whatever I was doing. So I wasn't really into it, and I was surprised later because I had no idea as a scale of reference, that kind of accidentally became one of the go-to sources for long-range shooting information on the computer. And so I thought, well, what the heck? I didn't know that happened. Kind of fell on my lap. So it's been fun, though. I'm having a good time with it.
So did that sort of compound on itself where you put up a couple of videos and then people kept asking questions, so you put up a few more
yes.
just grew organically without you sort of planning out the whole series. It just sort of happened and continued to develop?
Yes. So the process that took place, if you look at it, like if I was to look at it from a scientist looking from up on the hill at myself and my situation, what seemed to have happened was I'd post a video and I would notice like a huge amount of enthusiasm or questions in a category that I didn't realize was a category that people were curious about. So I'm like, wow, these guys are really actually interested in the internal ballistics of a weapon and how it functions and how it operates and what problems can exist. And all this, sometimes a person assumes that everyone else kind of has my exact or your own, perspective. And so as a person who is observant of what questions are being asked, because I used to give guitar lessons, for example, right? To little kids when I was in high school, because I was playing as a professional musician back in the day when I was a kid too. I was up on stage playing guitar when I was in 7th grade even. And but when I started giving lessons is when I really started figuring out how to read people just between the lines. I can look at them. And especially with the kid, they don't know how to articulate the question. They don't even know which question they're trying to ask because they haven't got that far yet in the guitar lessons. But I could know where they were going, and I could anticipate what they needed to know to get to what they're trying to really get to. And so I kind of developed a knack for that in terms of reading questions between the lines. And I realized once I started getting into the series, wow, like I really need to cover this from a scientific perspective, really covering the basis of the physics and the mechanics and the engineering behind everything and why. Because these people are not satisfied how to do the process. I can show, a 15-year-old girl or a 17-year-old kid off the street or whoever, or a 10-year-old, the process very quickly on how to engage targets at 1,000 yards. Yep. If you get them their input, their dope, and whatever, it's not hard. And they actually are the ones that usually have the least amount of stumbling blocks to get there because they're listening and you don't have to untrain them on all these things. So that's not the problem. But to master something, you have to really understand why it's that way, because then you can if you understand the true science behind it, you got the foundation, then you can superimpose that vast knowledge on all the unperfect conditions which you will encounter in the field, right? Because the field is a nasty environment that's not the shooting range bench. And so when stuff gets weird and you have to start doing problem solving, now they have to actually understand the science, because there's no way you could write a manual on what to do if this happens, what to do if this happens. because the combinations of problems that come in together at different angles is infinitely complex and is super dynamic, and you can never, ever have a list of answers. But if you understand the science, for example, of internal ballistics and how harmonics, rattle through a rifle, all the different moving parts, having to be like attached together to accomplish rigidity. You can, if you just teach the basics of the science, you just turn them loose and they understand. They can self-evaluate at that point and be like, oh, wow, why am I shooting like all of a sudden to the left? Oh, and they can self-evaluate their firing position or their marksmanship technique that they're using in that non-conventional firing position or whatever they're doing. And then they become a viable long-range precision shooter, which means viability, that word meaning they can take care of themselves, and they become a true expert, and they don't need to ask anybody because they know the science. And so that's what I wanted to deliver with the 101 series, was deliver that to the world and say, hey, here you go. Like, here's just the science of like how to do precision rifle shooting. It's kind of fun.
Do you find that, given that this was started, 6 years ago, is there things to update through that course? Is that something you've gone back and done?
That's a very good question. There are parts of the original instructional series where I go through the process of showing how to select a cartridge or showing what features need to exist in a scope. Now, in those video parts, I anticipated that years later, equipment continues to evolve. Cartridge selection continues to evolve all throughout time. People are continuously coming up with new things. So I was attempting, and I maybe could have more clearly articulated that point, although I think I did a pretty good job if people pay attention to all the verbiage in the beginning of the video. But I'm showing the procedure to go through on what characteristics to look for in cartridge dynamics. And once you understand the dynamics of cartridges, now you can go through, and then I did examples showing currently available technology, or with rifles, scopes, cartridges, powders, primers, etc., right?
Sure.
What I was trying to convey was the methodology and the science of how to make that selection process in a way that's going to decisively give you exactly what you're looking for. The process of elimination, so to speak. And so I suppose if I wanted to update the videos, I could show examples of some of the new existing technology. However, once I do that, there's a very short half-life to that video because next year there'll be some new deal that's different, right?
Yeah.
So in all honesty, most of my videos I try to keep timeless. Because science and physics never, ever change, ever. And as long as we're shooting rifles that use a propellant to project a lead projectile down a rifle barrel that produces recoil, the shoulder fired, as long as we're using firearms, we'll put it like that, these videos are going to be applicable to that, is what I try to do because I look long-term, like I look 50 years in the future, All that stuff is not going to expire. Now, the details on exactly which equipment I use as examples of traits you're looking for in equipment, those things will change over time. And that could be updated. One thing that certainly could be updated is my editing style. Because I started off on, Windows Movie Maker, and it was super low resolution.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny to see the evolution from the very first video, which is very, structured and non-organic,
Sure.
Where I'm sitting there, Mr. Serious Guy, reading my bullet points list. And then as I started to get more comfortable with it and kind of just calm down, when you get halfway through the series, I just kind of do it in more of a conversational format, which is more effective, I think. So if I would redo this series, I would cover the exact same material, the exact same points, and none of those have really changed. None of them are out of date, but I would update the video editing style, higher quality video, better B-roll footage, like the guy shooting the rifle, you could actually see what he was doing because it wouldn't be 900 miles away on a shaky camera with unprofessional photography. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
But the information is the gold. And I talked to one of my mentors in the training industry here in the United States, Mr. James Yeager of Tactical Response. He's kind of a controversial figure because he's a very robust character and very rough around the edges, but I love him. He's actually a very generous person. And I asked him, I said, do I need to go through and do I need to upgrade my equipment? Because my videos, I am a dinosaur with the computer, right? Tiborosaurus Rex, the dinosaur. And so do I need to hire a professional media crew? And he said, absolutely not. You don't need to worry about it because What you are delivering is the meat.
Yep.
There's meat versus sizzle is the explanation, right? So I'm not sizzling. It's like not a well-polished deal, that's like there for the special effects or whatever.
Sure.
It's the real heavy-duty meat of the topic. And so, but being a perfectionist, I would love to go back in time and help myself edit those videos or know which program to use for editing,
Yeah.
Because that was all a mystery to me. So I learned a lot there.
But the thing is that you learn and you come through. Is filmmaking of interest to you, or is that just a mechanism to get the information out there?
That's an interesting question. I never thought I would become interested in it, but I am an artist at heart. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was a kid, we did these personality-based like competency tests or whatever, psychology, blah, blah, blah at school to see what career you'd be best at. And I remember in first grade or second grade, they had all these questions on, and then you had to like remember which circle is attached to which, like a beehive or whatever, all these weird little tests they do.
Yeah. And
it came out at the end and it said, you will be a graphic design artist or an engineer.
Okay.
And so now I'm both. And it came out to be true. I'm both an engineer and I have formal education in science, but I'm also an artist too, right?
Yep.
And so all those things are true. And it comes together with this synergistic effect of being able to communicate the engineering. So that's cool. That's where art meets science. And I'm not trying to be Mr. Fancy Pants or nothing, but one of the reasons, there's a lot of people who are way smarter than Albert Einstein, for example. Like Minkowski, if you study geometry or if you're into mathematics and you read the history of it, Minkowski and some of these other guys that were peers of Albert Einstein were smarter than him in math and physics. They had a much better handle on it.
Sure.
However, Einstein was the guy that could articulate what he was trying to say. These other guys couldn't explain anything because they're like the quintessential, what do you call him? The nerd guy with the glasses. Do you have The Simpsons? Do you watch The Simpsons over there?
Of course, yeah.
The guy, the scientist guy with the lab coat all the time? Hi!
Is that Professor Frink, I believe?
Yeah, I forget the character. But that's how a lot of engineers are.
Yeah.
Or people that are in the computer world or, and it's just like Einstein was kind of an outlier because he could explain things in a very down-to-earth way, but and so that's why he became very, very effective and at communicating what he was trying to do with his whole spiel, right? Explaining relativity and inside-out geometry and all this crazy stuff that he was into. He could actually use parables and allegories and pictures and all different kinds of, kid-time story tales to explain something. And that's where the solid gold was in the – it's interesting in life. And even like if you look at all the best teachers throughout time they understood the topic material for sure, but they concentrated their firepower on making sure that the people receiving the information were actually grabbing it. And so that's what I try to do my best. Not saying I'm the best guy by far. There's a lot of other people that are way better shots than me. A lot of my students at my classes are better shots than I am. My wife